We've got some not so minor, M-I-N-E-R news today. Sports fans, the Republican Party is still in recovery mode after House Speaker Paul Ryan shocked the Argyle socks off the political world and said he is not ready to support Donald J. Trump, billionaire. Yesterday, we read you Trump's initial statement in response to Ryan's statement, but this morning, Donald Trump called into the Fox News network to flesh out his side of this spat in more detail.
I was really surprised by it, and it's fine. He can do whatever he wants to do. It's fine. But I was surprised by it. And by the way, many other people were surprised by it, and some were really surprised by it and not happy about it. I will tell you, I have many endorsements from yesterday. They're coming in left and right. He's one of the only ones that really was surprising.
But was there more? Oh, there was more. Trump also used his favorite social media microphone to defend himself and deride the House Speaker, tweeting, quote, "Paul Ryan said that I inherited something very special, the Republican Party. Wrong. I didn't inherit it. I won it with millions of voters!" Exclamation point. And then about an hour later, Team Trump escalated things even more when his campaign national spokeswoman, Katrina Pearson, went on CNN and had some tough words for Ryan if he doesn't change his mind.
If the Republican Speaker of the House does not come around to supporting the Republican nominee, do you think that Paul Ryan is still fit to be Speaker?
No, because this is about the party. Look, you have to understand, the last two presidential cycles, we were told John McCain was a conservative. His conservative review scorecard is a 37%. We were told Mitt Romney was a conservative, and he was pro-abortion, pro-gay marriage, pro-adoption, gave us Obamacare. And we were told to hold our noses and vote for the sake of the party. These same people are now telling us that because their guy didn't win, they want to hurt the party. We are a party. Paul Ryan needs to be, he's the leader right now. We're told Donald Trump is only the presumptive nominee. He's not the nominee until 12/37. So really, it's incumbent on Paul Ryan to help bring unity.
You know what, Mark? We are a party, too. Anyway, this afternoon, the Speaker's office put out a statement saying that Ryan, Trump, and the RNC chairman, Reince Priebus, will meet on Thursday to try to smooth things over. More leading Republicans have taken sides over whether or not to back Trump during the past 24 hours. Dick Cheney today said that he'll support the party's nominee, while Jeb Bush wrote on Facebook this afternoon that he won't vote for either Trump or Hillary Clinton in November. So, Mark, let us come back to the core issue here, not just unite or divide, but the particular of Trump versus Ryan. Who do you reckon is likely to blink first in this standoff of standoffs?
I think that Trump might blink first, but I think Reince Priebus is well positioned to try to smooth this over. The ties between the RNC and the Trump campaign are growing stronger. Paul Manafort has worked very hard on that. I think they're making progress there, particularly on the fundraising front. And I think Reince Priebus will probably appeal to his friend Paul Ryan. And when and if Ryan does endorse, it might even be more powerful now. Yeah. Because he'll say, well, I thought it over. I asked Trump to do better. Trump did better. But I don't think this is a minor thing. I think Ryan is uncomfortable with Trump on many levels. And we'll see how the meeting next week goes, but I'm not sure this is going to be as smooth a détente as some people are predicting. I have zero doubt about the answer to this question. And if anybody blinks, it's going to be Donald Trump. And you can see it. You know, last night, that response, he seemed to kind of be impetuous and firing back and saying, well, I'm not supporting Paul Ryan's agenda. If you think away of the ways that Trump, when he's decided to go after someone, the ways he's decided to go after people in the past. Did I mention Lion Ryan? Oh, you mentioned it. You know, that was relatively restrained. Yeah. The stuff today has been relatively restrained. Yeah. Katrina Pearson went a little bit out of her skis there, saying But she sometimes does that.
But Trump himself has been relatively modulated today in terms of how intensely he's attacked Ryan, and I think he wants to pivot anyway on some of these issues that Ryan cares about. So if he's going to be blinking, I think it's on his side. Yeah, I agree. And I just think that's where it's going to come. If there's blinking. Yeah. There may not be blinking, but if there's blinking, it'll be his.
If you think about how much resistance there's been to Donald Trump, by the end of this week, he's actually in a surprisingly strong position. Didn't get the Bushes, didn't get Ryans, not getting Mitt Romney, not getting Jeb Bush. But got Dick Cheney, symbolic, maybe there's some negativity. Got some members of Congress. Yeah. Didn't get the governor of Illinois. It's a mixed bag. But here's the key to me. Here's the key to me. Trump has to prove he can win a general election. They've got reservations about Trump's behavior, about his policy positions. Some have reservations about what kind of president he would be. But if the Republican nominee looks like he can beat Hillary Clinton, that's going to get a lot of people on board. And right now, he's too far behind.
But look, there's still a powerful thing here. It's still the end of the week has come. The Speaker of the House the last Republican nominee, the previous Republican nominee did that, the last two sitting Republican presidents, none of them are for Trump at the end of this week, not one. And that, to me, overshadows everything else in terms of party unity. Those are the biggest names in the Republican. And Cheney is whatever. I mean,
Donald Trump is an independent who ran as a Republican, who's got a lot of moderate positions.
But he says he wants to unify the party.
He does.
He says
he
that's
wants
his
to unify
goal.
the party on his terms.
Well,
he has smashed.
That's not going so
he has
well.
smashed the establishment. He has criticized the Bushes. He has criticized the ways of Washington. He has behaved in a way that no Republican nominee of our lifetime has ever behaved. And I agree that this week has gone perfectly for him. But he has sewed up the Republican nomination and gotten support from many establishment figures, and he still may get Paul Ryan.
Sewing up the Republican nomination is huge for Trump. If his goal is unity, then that's what he says it is. He has not achieved very much this week.
He also said he doesn't need total unity, and he's never going to get
total unity. These are the biggest figures in the Republican Party.
If you want to change Washington and you want to be a different kind of candidate,
I think you're
not going to get everybody.
Well, you should stop talking about unity then, because those guys. This is not a unified party.
As much as possible.
This is not a unified
party. But I will say counter to what I've just been saying. Not getting Ryan is a big deal, and I think he's going to be hard to get.
Thank you for agreeing with me
on that one point. All right, great guest coming up tonight.
The most important point.
The Bill Kristol of the Weekly Standard, Republican Congressman of New York, the Peter King, and a whole lot more. But first, a quick word from our sponsors.
I just want to emphasize the degree to which we are in serious times, and this is a really serious job. This is not entertainment. This is not a reality show. This is a contest for the presidency of the United States. And what that means is that every candidate, every nominee needs to be subject to exacting standards and genuine scrutiny.
That was President Obama earlier today talking about Donald Trump at the White House. Joining us now is someone who doesn't much care for the remaining presidential candidates, and he's calling for a third-party alternative. Bill Kristol, editor of the Weekly Standard. Bill is in our Washington bureau, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Mark.
What separates Republicans like Dick Cheney from Republicans like you in terms of willingness to stand with Trump?
You know, I guess just a different judgment of whether he has the character and temperament and judgment to be president of the United States. I don't think any of these issues is really a showstopper, these policies. Obviously, we're all used to, if you have to vote for one of two presidential candidates, to compromising on issues that one cares about and making, choosing the lesser of two evils and all that. It's just for me, and I think this is true for Mitt Romney, and I take it for the Bushes, I take it for Ben Sasse. He's been eloquent in this. I just think Trump doesn't meet the basic standard of, as I say, character and judgment for presidents of the United States.
Bill, I'm not trying to pick a fight between you and Dick Cheney. I'm just using you two as examples, and I'm not. Yeah. I'm just confused as sort of a sociological and human level. Like, you have I think, great respect for Dick Cheney's judgment about people's character. So I do,
but I would say
I'm just confused. Is that really it? That you're looking at the data, and Cheney says this guy, Vice President Cheney says this guy has the character to be president, and you say he doesn't? How could that be that you'd reach such a fundamentally different conclusion? Since in general you'd be inclined to endorse the Republican nominee.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be happy to come on with Dick Cheney. We could have a very civilized debate about this, but I don't expect that to happen. I would say one thing. I think elected officials, former elected officials, like Dick Cheney, they lean more heavily, or they're more presumptively likely to endorse the nominee of their party. They've done it a lot of times, and people they knew privately were not really great, but they supported this person running for Congress or that person running even for president, I suppose. I'm not elected. I don't expect to be elected to anything, and I suppose I maybe have a slightly, different standard in that respect. I'd say, but I think you guys captured it earlier, and you're just back and forth. I've had the same sort of mental back and forth myself. Should one be surprised that, Bush, the most recent Republican nominee, the Republican Speaker of the House, the previous Republican president, aren't supporting the Republican presumptive nominee? Yes, one should be, as Mark was saying in particular. But as I think John was saying, on the other hand, or maybe John was saying that. Anyway, Mark was saying, the other one of you was saying that. It's like, well, I can't see you, it's just the audio. So hard. Was correctly saying on the other hand, he's picked up an awful lot of people from Mitch McConnell down through a range of senators and others, and I guess with Cheney as well. And is it more impressive that this number of people who don't think well of Trump are endorsing or supporting Trump, or is it more impressive that you have a presumptive nominee who doesn't have the support of the Republican Speaker of the House, the former Republican presidential candidate, and all that, which is pretty amazing, I would say.
Bill?
The one other thing, yeah. So anyway, I mean, we'll see how this plays out. I think it's very much in flux and very much of a mixed bag at this point.
Bill, when you think about Donald Trump's temperament, which you say is basically what's disqualifying in your view in terms of him as president of the United States, what's the piece of evidence that you most seize on, the thing that he's done or said that stands out most to you, that says that a guy who did that, said that, acted that way should not sit in the Oval Office?
Her temperament maybe is even too mild. I would even say character. Well, just look at the few days before Indiana, and I thought this might hurt him in Indiana. It didn't, so the voters here exercising are on Dick Cheney's side, not on my side. You embrace the endorsement of a rapist, Mike Tyson, a man convicted of raping a 17-year-old girl, and you don't express any, when it's pointed out to you, you don't say, yeah, well, that was horrible, and I didn't mean to, I think of him still as a heavyweight champion, and, God, I deplore that. He doesn't even say that, right? He just say, I like toughness. Mike Tyson is tough. On the day of the Indiana primary, he spins the conspiracy story from the National Enquirer, which his friends probably put in the National Enquirer, about Ted Cruz's father being complicit in the assassination of a president of the United States. Not a little thing. No evidence for it, needless to say. Ted Cruz denies it, as he has to, as he properly should. And Donald Trump keeps on saying, well, no, I don't know. It could be true. It hasn't been denied by anyone. I mean, that level of just, willful disregard of all facts. I'd say willful disregard of all decency. For me, the one thing, though, if you ask me, like, what really would I wake up at 6 in the morning, just kind of thing, it was the mocking of the disabled New York Times reporter, which is such a humanly grotesque thing to do. And then he just lies and says, I didn't do it. So it's a combination, I guess, of the bullying, the lying, the just reckless disregard, as I say, of facts, out of prudence, to use an old-fashioned word, for a possible president. Again, if you want to have a congressman who's kind of a buffoon and kind of reckless and pops off a lot and says things he shouldn't say, and you think he'll vote right, fine. I mean, he's a congressman, right? What damage is he going to do to the country? And Commander-in-Chief?
Bill, I say this not as a question, but just as a punctuation, and then I'll ask you a question, which is, the person you just described is Dick Cheney and Mitch McConnell's candidate for president of the United States. That's the position we find ourselves in. So, this new idea of stopping Trump and stopping Hillary Clinton by finding someone who can win 6 states big enough to keep either of them from getting 270 electoral votes. We've been playing with the map today, and it seems doable. Somebody just has to win 6, medium-sized states, not the mega states, but Florida and Ohio, 2 mega states, but then Virginia, North Carolina, Colorado. You win those, you might be able to stop anybody from 270. If you could pick anybody in the country to do that, leaving aside whether they'd be willing, who's constitutionally eligible, who's someone who could pull that off with the right money?
Yeah, I think someone like the person I did have conversations with, I think it's been reported, retired Marine General Jim Mattis, who I think could have run a very impressive campaign, a very impressive man, as a genuine independent. He's more liberal than I am on a bunch of issues, which frankly probably would have helped for the particular strategy you're talking about. I think there's even a winning strategy, honestly, which is premised on a long shot, obviously, that the independent candidate takes off some. There's a debate. The 3 of them are on stage. A lot of voters see them together in October. This candidate would have to be at, what, 12, 15%? Mattis, to get on the debate stage. But Mattis said no. Well, you asked me anyway, so I'm saying. So Mattis said no.
So now that Mattis is out, we got 20 seconds. Name somebody who could do it, who might do it. Is there anybody?
Ben Sasse or Mitt Romney. I was with Mitt Romney last night, and I think he's thinking about it seriously. Or he could be Ben Sasse's campaign co-chairman, he and Joe Lieberman.
All right, those are 2 good names.
A young guy.
Bill, we're going to have you back to talk about the Romney option, because I agree with you. Up next, the King and Us. We'll talk to Congressman Peter King about Paul Ryan and Donald Trump in just a moment. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This next interview is on the House, or of the House. Joining us now from Long Island, the esteemed Republican Congressman from New York's 2nd District, Peter Thomas King. Congressman King, how are you? Good to see you.
Doing great.
You have a situation on your hands here in the Republican Party with Donald Trump as nominee, and a lot of members of the House trying to figure out whether they are going to be supportive of him or not. Just give us your sense. I know you've been critical of him in the past on a variety of issues, but now you say you're going to support him. Explain how that can be.
Yeah, what I've said is that I would support the nominee of the party. Donald Trump is going to be the nominee, so I will endorse him and I will vote for him. And I'm not trying to make a cute distinction here, but I will not be campaigning for him at this stage unless he can, whether it's his meeting with Paul Ryan or others, he's got to make a more coherent foreign policy, national security policy, more coherent trade policy, and just try to tie together somehow or resolve the inconsistencies in his overall policy. Now, the main reason I'm endorsing him, I am a Republican. I believe in the two-party system, and I expect or hope to be back in Congress next year. And I want to play a role in right now in what's happening within the Republican Party. I think we are at some sort of a defining moment. I mean, this is, unless this is a one-off aberration, this is this could be a real turning point in the party, because on every key, almost every key issue, Donald Trump is differing from what had been the accepted Republican policies for the last 50 or 60 years on defense, on trade, and really on just, the whole issue of being more receptive to other people.
Congressman, you're saying, I know you're saying he's deviating from Republican orthodoxy, but you said something else a second ago, that he needed to have a more coherent trade policy, foreign policy, economic policy. Are you saying that what you know of his policies currently is that they are incoherent?
Yeah, I am. For instance, he's talking about how China is going to be our main adversary, and we have to stand up to them on the economy and also militarily. At the same time he's saying that, he's talking about withdrawing our troops from Korea, withdrawing our troops from Japan, and even with the way he ridicules the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. One of the main purposes of the TPP was to strengthen our position vis-a-vis China, so that China cannot be picking off one by one these Asian countries to deal with. So he's got to show how you reconcile that. Or, for instance, how he basically is talking about some form of withdrawal from the Middle East, saying that the U.S. is not going to be a policeman, but at the same time we're going to go in and protect Christians all over the Middle East. Well, you can't. These are really very inconsistent, incoherent policies.
Congressman, in a Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump general election, who would be the favorite to win and why?
Right now, I would say Hillary Clinton is the favorite, but also going back to last summer, Donald Trump or Marco Rubio Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush would have been the favorite going back to last summer. Listen, Donald Trump has defied all the rules of gravity, all the rules of politics, and so right now, while Hillary Clinton has to be the favorite, I would not be surprised to see Donald Trump either one, make a very good race, or two, actually beat her, because he's going to come at her very asymmetrically.
I don't know
if she's ready for that.
Why does she have to be the favorite? What makes her the favorite right now?
I would just say the fact that Donald Trump's unfavorables are higher, the fact that she has a pretty much united party. I know some of the Bernie Sanders people will leave her, but the organizational Democrats are going to be with her. She has that whole basically government in exile that the Clintons have had over the years out there working for her, and she again. There are many more Democrats than Republicans, and they do have the large voting blocks coming for them, whether it's the African American vote or the Hispanic vote, which the Republicans don't have. Now, where Trump can cut into that significantly is by going for the Reagan Democrats in states like Detroit, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio. So that's why it's going to be very significant.
So, Congressman, Speaker Ryan said, like you did, that he'd support the Republican nominee. There's now a de facto nominee. You said you'd do that. Why shouldn't we take Congressman Ryan's position that's going back on his word?
I'd say, first of all, Paul Ryan was expecting this to be resolved at the convention. Secondly, Paul Ryan has different responsibilities than I do. As the Speaker of the House, he is also, in effect, the de facto leader of congressional Republicans, and he wants to ensure that Republicans keep their majority in the House. He wants to make sure that Donald Trump realizes that there are a number of House Republicans who have serious differences with him. And again, I haven't spoken to Paul, but I'm just assuming these are his reasons. And he wants to protect them. But also, Paul believes very strongly in a strong national defense. He believes very strongly in free trade. And he wants to find a way, I believe, to get Donald Trump to make some accommodation with that as we go forward.
Congressman, you just talked about one of the things that Paul Ryan seems to be doing here, which is trying to give some cover to some of your colleagues in the House. So just play sociologist. You're pretty well in touch with some of your colleagues on the Republican side. How many of your colleagues do you think will want to take that cover that Paul Ryan is offering and not do what you're doing, but try to keep their distance from Donald Trump, distance themselves as much as possible, and whether they have to repudiate him openly or whether they have to just stay clear of him for the sake of their keeping their jobs?
I would say there's a good 30 or 40 who have serious issues with Donald Trump politically. and they would be, let's say, the more moderate type Republicans. On the other hand, you do have some strong conservatives who feel pretty definitely that Donald Trump is not a conservative. So I would say Paul really has to look out for both wings of the party. But as far as actual electoral issues, I would say there's probably about 30 or 40 that, that would have some real concerns.
Congressman, it's Friday, so I'm going pure gimmick here. Give me 3 adjectives you would use today to describe Donald Trump.
Unusual, flamboyant, and an enigma.
3 adjectives you'd use today to describe Hillary Clinton.
Determined, strong, and insecure, which maybe undermines strong, but I say insecure because she's not sure where Trump is going to be coming from.
Trump got Dick Cheney's endorsement today. Good for Trump, bad for Trump?
Dick Cheney and Donald Trump. No, listen, it's good for him. Any Republican can get to endorse him is good. But I'm just thinking, as you said that, it struck me. My God, I can't imagine 2 more different people in my life than Dick Cheney and Donald Trump. Forgetting the politics, just the type of people they are. It's 2 different worlds.
I know you've suggested that.
Nothing else there.
You've suggested that Donald Trump poses this moment we're currently in as a crisis for the Republican Party. How serious is that crisis? Is this the kind of crisis that could be an existential crisis and could lead to the fracturing of the Republican Party as we know it?
It could result in somewhat of a restructuring of the parties. Listen, I never want to go away from a 2-party system. And but this is a defining moment. I mean, when you think of all the policies we've had, no matter who the candidates were, whether it's Goldwater and Rockefeller, whether it was Nixon, Reagan, you go through all of them, even when there were divisions in the party, there was much more that was agreed upon than is agreed upon now. I mean, on Donald Trump's key issues, the key points he's making, these are totally at odds with what the Republican Party position has been historically. And I know they use that term establishment, all that nonsense. Right. The fact is these are well thought out policies. We're going to change from them. We have to really analyze them very carefully and look at it because I don't want us to become an isolationist party. I don't want us to put ourselves in a position where we have the same, in some ways, the same foreign policy as Barack Obama, but we're disguising it as America first.
All right, Peter King, Congressman, have a great weekend. Thank you for being with us. It's always a pleasure to see you. When we come back, Donald Trump's D.C. summit next week and more after this quick break.
A lot of people thought it was very humorous, and they also thought it was an acknowledgement by Trump that he recognized a day that was important to the Hispanic community.
Do you think that he could be more sensitive to not stereotyping different ethnic groups?
I don't think he was stereotyping an ethnic group at all. It was a holiday for the Hispanic community, and I thought he thought it was all in the spirit of the holiday.
That was Paul Manafort, senior advisor to Donald Trump's campaign, talking about his boss's much comment upon Taco Bowl tweet yesterday, which has been massively retweeted. We're going to talk about Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton now. So let me give you some news on Hillary Clinton today. Several outlets reporting that Hillary Clinton is going to be interviewed by the FBI regarding her email server in the coming weeks. No date, according to the reports, has been set. John, I'm wondering, going back to the Taco Bowl, whether you think that thing is going to end up a footnote at best in this campaign, or is it going to linger in some ways?
Well, I think it is telling in a way, in that I think Trump meant it I mean, we joked yesterday, I did, that it was like a bumbled kind of Latino outreach effort. I actually think that is how he meant it. I mean, he meant it to be, I think he's trying, in his Trumpian way to reach out, but it's so ham-handed and so demeaning in some ways, and so trades in so many stereotypes and is so off-key that it's resonant in a way. I think Trump does so many controversial things that 6 months from now, 3 months from now, it will be a footnote, but it's of a piece with certain things that Trump has done in the past and will do in the future, which is why I think it's not just a little gaffe. It has like some broader resonance.
The Trump campaign's to-do list is massive. To get ready for the convention, get ready for the general, pick a running mate, debate prep, all these things. Hispanic outreach has got to be a priority. One of the criticisms with the Romney campaign was that they never really got a full-fledged Hispanic outreach effort up and running. And it's going to be fascinating to see if that tweet represents, I won't say the sum total, but the way that Trump thinks he can use social media to improve his chances.
Here's the thing, Mitt Romney could have, the criticism was valid because he never got a real Hispanic outreach operation up, but he could have focused on it, tried to figure out how to get out of the deportation box he put himself in. The problem for Trump is, who is the Hispanic politician, the Hispanic business leader? Who's the Hispanic who would be the face of that effort? Like, I mean, there may be one. I just don't know who that would be. Like, even if he wanted to focus on it and do it, who would be the marquee players in that among Hispanic American Republicans who would rally to Trump and come out and say, Donald Trump's a good guy, and that whole thing about the wall and the rapists and all that stuff is not a problem. I don't know who those people would be.
All right, joining us now from the Art Deco Palace down the street, NBC News' Katie Tur, who covers the Trump campaign. Katie, what would you say was the highlight and the low light for the Trump campaign this week as the week ends?
This week, well, you guys are talking about the Taco Bowl. I think that can be considered in many corners the low light of the campaign's week so far. And if you're going to play devil's advocate, the highlight could potentially be his response to Paul Ryan, and then the campaign manager's response to Paul Ryan. Donald Trump saying that he doesn't endorse Ryan. That's him embracing his outsider status. And then I was speaking with Corey Lewandowski last night, and I asked him what he personally thought of the speaker's words and his lack of coming out to endorse him, and Lewandowski pointed to his boss standing on the stage under these bright lights, captivating the attention of about 10,000 people who were at the West Virginia rally last night, and he pointed and he said, that's the leader of the Republican Party. And in some ways, that can be considered, I know it's probably not a popular opinion in Washington, but by the voters, a highlight of this campaign, that he's embraced them instead of embracing the political elite.
Katie, I want to play a little sound right now of Donald Trump talking just a couple moments ago about Paul Ryan in Omaha, Nebraska.
Paul Ryan, I don't know what happened. I don't know. He called me 2-3 weeks ago. It was a very nice conversation. He was congratulating me. This was before we had the ultimate victory, but he was congratulating me on doing so well. I figured routinely he'd be behind it. And he, the other day, just did a big surprise because I have had so many endorsements. I mean, today, a lot of them. Bob Dole came in. Dick Cheney came in. Many congressmen came in. Many senators come in. And we've had tremendous endorsements from a lot of people.
So, Katie, do you think that as we now, the big story next week is going to be their meeting, right? How do you think Trump will conduct himself in the run-up to that meeting? Will he attack Paul Ryan? So far, even though he's making these comments, he seems relatively measured to me. He's not whipped out some horrible nickname. He's not really attacking Ryan. He's more like expressing befuddlement, which suggests to me he wants détente.
Here's the thing. I can't predict Donald Trump's behavior, so this could change at any moment. But I don't think he's necessarily going to try to provoke Paul Ryan anymore, because he does, despite what he says in the campaign trail, he does need the Republican establishment to unify behind him, at least to some degree, in order to start fundraising for this campaign. He's going up against Hillary Clinton, potentially, probably, and she's going to be running what should be about $1 billion campaign. He's going to need to find a way to make amends with the Republican establishment and convince not just the other politicians, but fundraisers to come out and fundraise for him and give him money, because he's not going to win unless he's going to be able to go up against her with real money backing him on his side, and ads against her, and all of the various things that campaigns have in place in order to take out a competitor.
Katie, I'm told by sources familiar with Paul Ryan's operation that the Ryan team did not call Donald Trump's team before the interview that Ryan did. Kind of extraordinary at this phase that they wouldn't have given them a heads up. I'm wondering if you think that's just like kind of a misstitch, or that there's not a lot of commerce between the two parties except through Reince Priebus.
I don't think there is much relationship there, if you will. I think that Paul Manafort behind the scenes and a number of their other operatives, Rick Wiley, are trying to reach out. Chris Christie are trying to reach out to the folks in Washington, but Donald Trump himself is waiting for them to call him. I've spoken to Corey Lewandowski a number of times about this, and whenever I've asked, who have you spoken with, who has Donald Trump talked to, he said Donald Trump is open to talking to anybody. So my sense is that the campaign is waiting for these leaders, these Republican leaders, these politicians, to come out and reach out to him. And without doing that, there isn't much interaction between the campaign. I could be wrong, but that is certainly my sense of things. I know that Manafort and Wiley and others are trying to smooth things over. They're going through the RNC a lot, but they're trying to smooth things over with those on Capitol Hill. Jeff Sessions as well is trying to do that. But so far, I think it's very telling that the only real emphatic endorsement from a senator has been Jeff Sessions, and the rest of them, if they have endorsed, have said that they've always said they're going to endorse the Republican nominee, or they haven't endorsed at all, like Lindsey Graham. But nobody was expecting Lindsey Graham to endorse Donald Trump after this entire campaign so far.
Right, and Trump putting out an incredibly acerbic statement about Graham today. NBC's Katie Tur with an extraordinarily lifelike background behind her. Katie, thank you. Coming up, the down ballot down low with Trump as the nominee. How vulnerable are Republican House candidates all over America? We'll talk to you about that. And if you're watching us in Washington, D.C., you can listen to us on the radio in D.C. area on Bloomberg 99.1. And we'll be right back.
chatter is growing about just how dangerous Donald Trump might be to down-ballot Republicans across the country as the Republican nominee. There are at least 7 Senate contests that are considered toss-ups by the Cook Political Report, which tracks closely and scientifically such things. But for our By the Numbers segment this week, we wanted to focus on the somewhat less talked about House races. So we called in a couple of experts, David Wasserman, the House editor from the aforementioned Cook Political Report, and our Bloomberg colleague, the great and glorious Jennifer Jacobs. They join us from our D.C. bureau, looking like twins, sort of siblings almost, identical glasses, kind of incredible. David, let's talk about the House. Let's start with you. Give us a sense of what the current House battleground looks like.
Sure. Well, Republicans have 247 to 188. It's the largest majority since 1928. So Democrats would need to pick up 30 seats to take back control of the House. Now, Democrats picked up 37 seats in 1964 when Barry Goldwater was on the ticket. So that's what they're hoping for, is a repeat of that. But it's a lot harder these days when the House is much better sorted out. The first 15 seats that Democrats need to get to 30 are really, really easy, and they've been toss-ups all year. The next 15 seats are really, really hard. And so what I'm going to be watching is how many of the 26 Republicans who sit in districts that Obama carried in 2012 are going to refuse to endorse Trump.
Jennifer, what's your early read? Obviously, Paul Ryan is more than a bellwether, but what's your early read on the question Dave just raised, which is how are these House members going to behave now?
Well, I do know that some of the House members are concerned about the Trump effect. I just talked to Liz Mayer, who's the head of an anti-Trump super PAC, Make America Awesome, and she said they actually haven't been doing very much lately and likely might shift gears away from fighting Trump because some of her consultants have gotten 911 calls from their House clients who have said, you've got to help me because I'm in trouble. Trump is dragging me down in my House district. And so therefore this super PAC is you know, kind of possibly disbanding because you know, people need their help elsewhere. So you know, could there be you know, a big wave? Unlikely, but I do know that there are districts that are very concerned about this. There are places where they are worried, and obviously Paul Ryan is taking it very seriously. I did talk to some of his allies today. They said that he has done fundraisers in almost every competitive district. And he's raised $3.7 million in the first quarter of 2016 for his House members. So they really are taking it seriously.
Dave, talk about some of the most endangered Republicans who are endangered if Trump turns out to be the worst-case scenario for the party.
Well, you know, the irony here is that the Republicans who are likeliest to distance themselves from Donald Trump are the ones who are likeliest to end up losing to Democrats, and that might have the effect of making the Republican conference even more conservative in 2017, even if they keep the majority. But I'm watching 2 types of districts in particular. Districts where at least 20% of adults are Latino or Asian, and districts where at least 25% of the population has a college degree. Those 2 types of districts are where I think Donald Trump could be radioactive and drag some Republicans into some surprisingly uncomfortable races.
Jennifer, what do you think Donald Trump needs to do to put the minds of these House candidates at ease? I mean, what could he do in the course of the next week or 2 that would make people get somewhat more comfortable with the idea of him on the ticket as their nominee, I mean?
Right. I don't know if Donald Trump is amenable to doing anything differently. I mean, I suppose the calculation for Donald Trump would have to be, you know, would he gain more votes in the general election by maybe shifting gears a little bit and toning it down more than he would lose if he changed, you know, from his base. So, you know, what he could say to reassure them, that, you know, who knows? Who knows what the Trump effect is going to be on the general? I mean, I don't think anyone knows that.
David, just to give you a pure number question here. Just how many seats could be in play in your worst case scenario if Trump is just worse than Goldwater? Like, what's the most plausible number that could be in jeopardy for the Republicans?
Well, it's still not all that high because of gerrymandering, but I think 45 to 50 seats is probably the most we'd see in play on the Republican side. You know, an example of a member who's in a real bind as it is a guy like Carlos Curbelo from Florida's 26th district. He represents a heavily Cuban district. He is Cuban American. That's a well-educated, high Latino district where he has said he will never vote for Trump. Another district might be Virginia's 10th district in the northern Virginia suburbs, where Barbara Comstock has given money that Donald Trump gave to her a couple years ago back. So those are the kinds of places that we're going to be watching carefully.
All right. Dave Wasserman, Jennifer Jacobs, You guys make our Friday. Please come back soon and have a good weekend. Coming up, we'll have the second king of our show tonight, presidential optics guru Josh King. He's going to grade the candidates this cycle. We'll be right back with that after this.
Closing our really big show with a really big guest. He knows what it takes to look like a president. Josh King is the former director of production for presidential events for Bill Clinton and his White House. He's also the author of the fabulous new book, Off Script, An Advanced Man's Guide to White House Stagecraft, Campaign Spectacle, and Political Suicide. Josh King, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, John.
Very compelling subtitle.
We're going to look at some events from this campaign and ask you to kind of break them down chalk talk style, starting with Hillary Clinton, an event in the Fillmore in Philadelphia from April 20th, 2016. Tell us what you see here.
Man, look at that.
Yeah, so let's go to the Fillmore, shall we? This is a wide shot, an establishing shot. It's taken from a scissor lift somewhere back by the press riser. Notice Secretary Clinton is right here in the middle. There's a bowl effect for her. The crowd behind her is a wonderful long distance behind her, which, when you look at a tight shot through the lenses from the back press riser, those people are going to be nice and blurred out, so they won't distract from Secretary Clinton. Let's look over at the tight shot. So this is a long lens from the press riser. She is beautifully lit, a lot of lights inside the Fillmore, but all these people, this is just a sea of blurry people. They're not too compacted, as you saw earlier.
So this is a well-staged event.
This is a perfectly well-staged event in Philadelphia, with one exception.
Although they're blurry, you can tell that that is a multiracial crowd.
Multiracial crowd, enthusiastic. Let's not forget these American flags, which you can certainly discern. There is one problem, though. There's no geographic identifier. So while we're at the Fillmore in Philadelphia, you really don't have an idea about that, except when you go over to what we call the cutaway shot. You've got journalists who are here on a special riser off camera. They're shooting across Secretary Clinton to this sign over here.
Right, show us the sign. We got to move.
Voila, we are at the Philadelphia Inquirer shot. This is the cutaway. Secretary Clinton, Hillary for
local consumption.
All right, let's move on to Bernie Sanders here, just because if there's been any candidate this year who's famous for his gigantic rallies, ginormous Obama-sized rallies, Bernie Sanders. Talk about this.
This is the Big Four Bridge, the Ohio River behind us. This is what we call magic hour. It's the most beautiful time of day to stage an event.
So this is Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville, Kentucky. But importantly, right on this side of the river is Jefferson City, Indiana, where the primary was being held that day. Sanders wins it, surprisingly, and yet here in Kentucky, it's the May 17th primary, so you get a twofer by going to this media market. What you do have with Senator Sanders is this common future to believe in that he's been very consistent with from event to event. But look how the afternoon sun and the sunset is playing off the Big Four Bridge. Just a beautiful bucolic scene, straight on. This is what the photographers who are traveling with him, the pool photographers, are shooting from underneath Senator Sanders. It's the only angle that they can make. This is perfect for the New York Times or Wall Street Journal.
Dramatic.
It's a close-up.
Let's move on to a Donald Trump event. This is from February 27th in Bentonville, Arkansas. Trump's event's obviously also massive and also pretty well staged. Show us what you see here.
So what I see here, obviously, is the very powerful use of the delivery of his 757 aircraft that pulls onto the apron at Bentonville, and it's probably a couple hundred feet away. Donald Trump gets out of the airplane. He's in the hangar. Now, the problem with the hangar doing these events is he's very backlit because the airplane is out in the daylight, and you can't throw enough light on Donald Trump's face to bring out all of his wonderful complexion.
So you get the airplane, but you get the backlit.
Airplane good, backlight bad.
Yeah. All right, what do you see in this photo?
So the first thing that I see, which he's done so well during the campaign, is making sure that his viewing audience at home knows where he is. Where is he? He's in Costa Mesa, California.
Why does the viewing audience care where he is?
Well, because the local newspapers want to show that he's focusing on an immigration event. That these people are saying that they had relatives who were killed by illegal immigrants, and this is in a media market where that matters. Yep. And he could be going any place in the country, but he shows off where he's going. So another different event, another different geographic identifier. The most important thing I took from this, Mark and John, are these two things. These are large reverse monitor audio speakers, so that when you see Donald in a tight shot on the evening news, he's more conversational. He's not elevating his voice. He is not being what he would say shrill, because he's getting so much sound blasted back at him. He knows how to project to his audience.
All right, take a seat right there, and let's talk a little bit more about Trump real quick. Two things we want to talk about here. One of them is, let's talk about the hat.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to wear hats in politics, right? Mike Dukakis, the hat, the tank, bad, no hats. Why does he get away with the hat?
Well, for a few reasons. First of all, I'm told that he plays golf in that hat regularly at Trump National down in Palm Beach. My friend Joe Plumeri says that he wears that white shirt, khaki pants, and that hat, and he just traded Trump on the bill for Make America Great Again. Now, if you wear that hat in public and you're a photo editor looking at the next day's paper, you can't crop out that message. Right. So he's wearing his bumper sticker on his head. And he's very natural in it. He's authentic. He's comfortable in his own skin. He's not trying to be a tank commander or a coal miner.
He is what he is.
He's wearing a golf cap.
All right, quickly, the Taco Bowl photo. If you worked for Trump and he'd come to you and said, I want to tweet this out, big smile, would you have said, tweet it, boss, or squelch that tweet?
I would have said squelch that tweet, but I can't argue with the fact that it has had 80,000 retweets and 100,000 likes, and it's been the conversation that we've had all day long. I said this morning that you look at the expression on his face in Trump Tower. He's not eating. He's not gorging himself the way he made fun of Governor Kasich.
Just a photo op.
He's very much being consistent with his brand, and he's not embarrassing himself. He's giving his thumbs up to it, and he's a man comfortable in his skin in that office.
All right, Josh King, thank you for breaking all that down. Josh's book, again, out now. It's called Off Script. Buy it. Up next, to hell with the men, says Donald J. Trump. We'll explain right after this.
The hell with the men. The men. I've been winning with the men. I've got these massive numbers. They all say, he wins with the men, he's through the roof. The hell with that. I want to win with the women, okay? I want the women.
That was Donald J. Trump just minutes ago at Omaha saying to hell with men. That includes you. To hell with you. Catch us online at BloombergPolitics.com. Coming up on Bloomberg West, the incoming president of FireEye. Until next week, after we have an amazing weekend, to hell with us. We say to you, sayonara.